Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome. This is your friend and your host, Karan Detani, and welcome to the Karan Detani Show. And this is the Three Principles with Dr. Mark Howard. So, without any further ado, let's welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Mark Howard. Let's start the show. Hi, Mark. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Karan. Just so happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Mark. So, Mark, I see that lots of people they have had this understanding of the principles. They know what the principles are and how they work, but it's like something is missing. Something just doesn't click. They still suffer from stress, depression, anxiety. So, I would like to ask you, how does the principles help us gain our mental well-being within?
Oh, we're going to start off with a easy question to begin with, huh? um, geez, that's just a wonderful question and really speaks to the hope of the principles. For me, I just have a feeling of hope with people and myself understanding the three principles. How it helps people, I think, is that um, it allows people to discover um, the kind of the health that lies within our consciousness. The understanding of the principles brings people to a place of beautiful feelings. We might call it makes them more accessible to hearing wisdom, of getting a sense that they can live beyond um, the struggles they're now having. And so the understanding of them really is very powerful and allowing people to live in what Sid would call another level of consciousness, another level of understanding. So when your level of understanding rises or your level of consciousness rises, you're living beyond your habitual way of thinking. You're living beyond the reality that has you suffering now. So it's very hopeful. And the other thing for me that um, really resonated with me is that people can learn through a realization of wisdom. I hadn't known that. I thought it was always a function of our cognitive functions, getting our thinking right. But I started to realize human beings can have insight into their true nature and realize how they come about as human beings, creating a reality they live in. And that will free them up. That will allow people to think any way they want to think about themselves or about life. So, so that's what I think about it, Karan.
Great. So, Mark, you talked about our true nature.
Uh-huh.
So, could you please elaborate on that?
Well, again, I am sharing this with, it's really my understanding of the teachings of Sydney Banks, who really saw that um, we truly are more than our psychology, that we are truly more than this physical form, that we are really, all of us are part of a spiritual energy that really created life, the energy behind the evolution of life. And he called that mind. And so going along in my learning from him and attending seminars and continuing to read his books and so forth, even to today, it started to wake up that I'm more than just Mark Howard and Mark Howard's learning so far about life, that my true nature is really one of love and understanding. And that in that true feeling of happiness, contentment, peace of mind, love, and understanding, I'm really being guided by the intelligence of mind, the intelligence that's behind creation. And so that's what I mean by our true nature. We are more than our own thinking, our own psychology. There's just more to us than we can even imagine. And getting a deep sense of peace, contentment, pure love now, not love about having somebody in your life or that kind of personal love. I'm talking more about just the deep feeling of contentment is really just the tip of the iceberg of our true nature. So again, it's beginning to get a sense of like we're never going to figure this out. You're never going to know intellectually what I'm pointing to with my glimpse of it, but you can get a feeling for the truth of it. It can resonate with you. You can get, as we're talking together today, just some nice feeling that brings a calm or a sense of, oh wow, that makes sense. And that's it. Because you will never, uh, being in our human form, find our true nature. You will experience our true nature. That's what Sid said that helped me so much because when he talked about his experience, and the power of thought, I kept looking for something to come to my mind. But what he really said was it's an experience. It's not intellectual, it's an experience, meaning that it's this feeling that I'm describing with these words that's available to us, which eventually becomes an insight. And that really helped me quiet down, trying to look for, mind or my true nature, but just to open up to beginning to have experiences of peace, of love, of contentment, or even an insight. An insight really, if you looked at yourself having an insight into what you've seen for yourself about the principles, if you really looked at it, when you really had that experience at first, it was just something that was just a feeling you dropped into, and then you got the words for it. So our true nature um, is love and understanding, is the intelligence of mind. It exists beyond our personal thinking. Did that make sense, Karan?
It beautiful. True nature is love and understanding beyond the personal thinking. Beautiful. You know, the first phase when we had this understanding is very beautiful. The same thing was with me when I had this understanding. My mind was completely quiet. I had these beautiful feelings, these insights, but later on, it changed. Now, sometimes I'm quiet and it's fine, but sometimes the thoughts, they are quite scary. Okay. And they really feel bad. So why is it happening? Why did I have this insight? And now why did that change?
Karan, with your three questions, there's so much richness here for us to look at together. And I hope we have time to hear from people. You speak to just beautiful points of understanding that help us. So when you had your insight, you had a rise in your level of consciousness. In other words, um, you had a deeper understanding of how you create your reality, how you live in your experience. So you're here, and then you had a shift in your level of consciousness. That's an insight. And in that come beautiful feelings and the insight. The insight is formed for you as a thought about life. For me, it was the first one I had was feelings are made up. But before that, I had this beautiful feeling that comes with a shift in my levels of consciousness. So you're here, now your level rises. Now, here's the key, because it'll help you with maybe you've already seen this, but for me, I struggled because I wanted to stay here. I wanted to stay at the level of my insight. I thought, oh man, when I saw it, I was in this beautiful experience, of seeing something beyond anything I had ever understood. And I thought, oh man, if I really got this, I'd be happy. And so I wanted to stay there. But again, what I've learned from Sydney Banks is our levels of consciousness are always changing. So you can't control consciousness. Consciousness is before you. You are consciousness, but it's a spiritual energy, you see. So how can you as this physical being control your level of consciousness? What you can do is know what's happening, you see. And so having beautiful insights does not guarantee you won't have fearful thinking. You won't get worried. You won't get into a low mood. But as you move further along, evolving your understanding, you see more and more clearly what's going on. And Sid had a beautiful sharing about this that I love, and I continue. Honestly, I'm still continuing to reflect on it. We were talking about getting depressed, and he couldn't kind of relate to that, but he did say, "Look, if you find yourself in a low mood, just have the courage." This is beautiful. Have the courage to see you just had a drop in your level of consciousness. That's all that went on, is your level of consciousness drop. Isn't that beautiful to see? That's all that's happened. And we're always going to live in our lives experiencing levels of consciousness changing. But if we understand and see what's going on, we can relax about the fact when we drop into lower levels of consciousness. That's why he said have the courage, because when you drop into a low mood, it looks real, right? That's the nature of thought and consciousness. Once your thinking takes a dive into how badly your life is going, or how you have no energy for the day, or how you should have treated someone better, or how you making so much mistakes, you really want to have the courage to to not look at it. And that's where the courage lies, because when you're in that thinking, it looks real, doesn't it? It looks real. And the only way I've seen myself um, look at it differently is it occurs to me in my mind, it arrives what's going on. Oh my God, Mark, your thinking went south again. Something like that shows up. So that's why you still have maybe fearful thinking or painful thinking, even though you've had beautiful insights, because your level of consciousness changes. Now, the more you can um, um, see that as a natural course of the human condition and not make it a big deal, uh, um, you'll see that you recognize what's going on sooner. and actually can move yourself back to the nicer feelings that exist at a higher level of consciousness. What do you think of that, Karan?
Oh, beautiful. I got it. It was about a level of consciousness. It's just like an elevator. If you're on the lower floors, you can see only what's right there. And the higher you go, the more you can see. Beautiful. And
Yeah, excuse me. I was at a 3-day seminar Sid gave, and he was talking very spiritually about, I don't remember exactly, but about God or so forth. And in me, I just all of a sudden had no fear. It didn't exist. I had a jump in my level of consciousness listening to him. And how it played out in my understanding was I had no fear. It was gone. I had no fear of death. I had no fear of my director that I had to report to. There was nothing. It did not exist. I was in these beautiful feelings of there's nothing to fear in the world. Now, with your question, I don't live there. I get fearful thinking, and again, but what I do know is there is a level of consciousness that I got to where there is no fear, and so I just keep open to uh, moving in that direction. Seeing that clearly more in my life. But it was a beautiful gift. Um, and I would love to live there. I don't live there quite yet because of my consciousness changing. But I know it's there. I've had the insight, I've had the realization. So that soothes me and it keeps me open to just looking to move in that direction more and more. So that's just a story of how we can't live at a level of consciousness, even though we would love to.
beautiful, beautiful. That's quite insightful. And now I would like to ask you about happiness. I've heard that people say that happiness is our default nature. It's what's already there beyond our thinking. So I'm trying that. Like I quiet my mind, okay, but I don't get there too fast. It's like I have to do some activities to be happy, like hang out with my friends, watch a movie, but it doesn't come just by quieting my mind.
Well, I love this. We are covering topics I do seminars on, just one of your questions. So it's so rich, but I love that we're able to cover it. I have a feeling for answering your questions, and I hope that's coming across to your audience. See, now what I would ask you, here's what I would ask you. When you're with your friends and you drop into happiness, what's different than when you're not? What's different?
I'm not focused on my thinking. I'm
That's it.
focused. Yeah, that's it.
That's right. You're not thinking your usual thinking. See, that's what, you're working at a quiet mind, but what you have to realize is just what you said. If you're not focused on your usual thinking, you'll drop into happiness. And so with your friends, this is like all of us. We're all like this. You just see that we're all human. Here's how I would put it together. When you go to your friends, you give yourself permission to not think your troubling thoughts or not think about yourself. And the minute you don't think about yourself with your friends, you're in a good feeling. You're enjoying yourself. You're happy. That's it. So you already do it. You just don't realize it. All of us use the excuse of the circumstances to drop our usual thinking. But if you could do it there, then you could do it anywhere, really. You see, you already do it. No one's making you happy. I mean, it's nice to be with friends. I mean, I'm not saying you don't enjoy your friends and it's nice to hang out with friends. But to really get the feeling of enjoying them, you and I would have to drop our thinking about ourselves. Period. And you can see when you're there and you have dropped your thinking about yourself with your friends, you're in the feelings of happy. So let me share a little more around that. Please, people, look at this. This is really powerful. If you could say to yourself, oh, I've been reading Sydney Banks as a way to get happy, but I don't get happy. But when I'm out on a walk, I get happy. Or so and so. Well, when you're out on a walk, you've let go of your stressful thinking. So you can let it. If you've done that, if you could really see you do that somewhere, you can do it anywhere. But let me just share a few things in hearing Sydney Banks. One thing he said is the most unnatural state of a human being is to be unhappy. The most unnatural state of a human being is to be unhappy. We're made to be happy. He also said, you really have to believe your mind. So he used mind to say God. And he used mind because he was bringing it into psychology. But he really wanted us to believe we are God. And if you believe you're God, you'll be happy. You're meant to live your life in happiness, in love, and understanding. And one more thing. These are just stories that have affected me, and I'm sharing it with you, Karan, and the group to see if it helps them. Now, we were talking one time about here in the United States, there was a big push to develop self-esteem in children, school-age children. So there were courses on self-esteem taught to school-age children. Well, Sid got taken aback by that. He said, you don't need to teach courses. You have self-esteem right now. In other words, you have happiness and well-being. You have the feelings you're looking for right now. Were it not for your silly beliefs. Isn't that something? Were it not for your silly beliefs, were it not for the thinking you're in. You see? Can you take that in? Now, he didn't, I don't think he meant to disparage our beliefs by calling them silly. He used the word silly, I think, because he wanted us to take our beliefs less seriously. He wanted us to see they were just silly ideas. They were just nothing. But that's what's in the way of your happiness, self-esteem, contentment. And so I just wanted to share a few times where Sid's sharing helped with your question. around happiness. You know, the three principles community, there's been a saying that it's our default setting. You know, that's just a saying in the community to really say that um, we would be in the feelings of happiness were it not for the thinking we're in. So, Karan, when you're with your friends, you drop that thinking. You just drop it. You don't see yourself dropping it, but you do. And maybe you're thinking more of your friends, or maybe you're enjoying a story they're saying, or maybe you're having a laugh at their joke. That's dropping your thinking. And in order to do all of that, you can't keep thinking your stressful thinking. So we all are like that. I've seen that in my life, you know. Um, and so it's just waking up to the fact that you already dropped the thinking. You already do. So I don't mean to then start practicing this. I want you to realize this, to see, oh my God, wait a minute here. I've been trying to quiet my mind, but I already do that. You know, I already do that. I just use circumstances of my life to give me the permission to do it. I'm just making that up. That's how I have talked about me doing it. I use different scenarios in life where I am happy, and I use those circumstances to give me permission to drop it. Now, again, that doesn't mean you don't enjoy your friends. It just means you've changed your mind when you're with them. I have now he's almost close to 3 years old. He'll be 3 in the month of September. Grandson. When he comes around, I cannot be in a bad place. I mean, when he's around, I'm just in laughter. I'm in just a beautiful feeling. I've given myself permission to not think about troubling thoughts that still haunt, that still visit my mind. Now, I don't think of myself that way. I don't think, oh, Mark, your grandson's here, so you're giving yourself permission to not think your troubling thoughts. I'm just explaining. It just occurs. I'm just in it. But I'm just explaining to you, you're already doing what you're trying to set out to do by quieting your mind.
Beautiful. I will ask you my last question, then we'll open for audience participation.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we are talking about innate well-being within, right? So I know that we have this innate well-being within, but in this self-help world, we learn about beliefs, subconscious programming, past trauma. They say that you have to change the programming. You have to get rid of your negative thoughts. Only then you can feel better. Then you can have your well-being. So, what's the take of the principles about this? How can we feel better or have this new perspective of life, this new shift in thoughts without changing our programming?
Let me just kind of see where to start. Well, what comes to mind for me initially is um, to see beyond um, the effects of life that you've been through. You brought up trauma. You know, people have had traumatic experiences. But to find the well-being that when you find it will guide you um, to resolve your programming, so to speak, or I would call it your conditioning. or I would call it the hurtful effects of your circumstances. It again, we go back to it requires a rise in your level of consciousness. It requires an insight into the nature of thought. And when you have a realization about the nature of thought, your level of consciousness rises and you see your past experiences with understanding. You actually see how to resolve them. And at a higher level, they get resolved. They are taken care of. Another way of saying it is you're taken care of. So you don't need reprogramming. I couldn't understand exactly if that's all what you were asking, but you don't need reprogramming. Really, you don't need to get your feelings out, because getting all of that done, you're still at the same level of consciousness. You really want to realize that you don't have to carry around in your mind painful experiences from your past. You don't have to carry around in your mind thinking about yourself that arose from these painful experiences in your life. You don't have to continue to think about the people around those painful experiences in the same way when they come to your mind. So that's really the piece that brings people an insight that carries them beyond their usual thinking and brings innate wisdom or innate well-being. Again, the happiness, well-being, contentment, wisdom, all of that speaks to dropping into the consciousness of the intelligence of mind. So so I'm going to share a little bit more here because it's very delicate, and I want to make sure you understand what I'm pointing to. The actor James Gandolfini, I think that's how you say his name, I don't know if people around the world get the TV program The Sopranos, but he was the lead actor. And he did a documentary on interviewing veterans of in the United States of the Iraqi War. And I remember this one hour where he interviewed 3 soldiers who had trauma. And I remember one of the ways that all 3 of them responded in that we're tired of continuing to go back over the trauma to try to feel better. We don't want to look at it anymore. It doesn't seem wise to us to keep looking at the trauma and living in those feelings. We want to just go on with our lives. There was the wisdom of resolution. That was the wisdom guiding them. Sid's direction comes from the realization that you did have the experience in your life. It did happen. But in the physical world, it is gone. It does not exist. I talk to my clients through the years of working in the psychiatry department. I often say to them, look, to look at this together, that it doesn't exist any longer. Let's, you and I right now, let's try to go back to that physical place of that happening. Well, it's impossible. It's gone. The experience that's causing pain is really because it's the memory. It's the memory of the experience, as Sid said, carried through time, from the time of the experience to now, in thinking, in our minds. When the memory comes up, people engage it. People think about it. People pay attention to it. And when that happens, they get all of the, excuse me, they get all of the thinking they have about experiencing that traumatic event or events. It may have happened over a course of several years. The freedom from the effect of that is to see that it's only kept alive because we engage the memory. It's not that you stop the memories from coming into mind, but you can have a realization that you don't have to think about them. You don't have to think that thought. It's just a thought. Memory is just a thought, just like other thoughts we get. Having opinions about someone, being judgmental about somebody or ourselves. We get a host of thoughts that, as we engage them, we start feeling bad, and we can envision, we can see once again the experience. I was talking one time to a group about the nature of thought, and some person in the audience raised their hand and said, "Mark, I can't believe this. This is wonderful. I just realized I don't have to think every thought I have. I can't believe this. I have always, every thought that came to mind, I would think about it. I realized from what you were sharing, I don't have to do that." It's the same realization about a traumatic, a memory of a traumatic experience. That's where the freedom comes, because you want to get free of the effect of living in the memory of it, so you can begin to awaken your true nature. That you could start to live beyond that level of consciousness and begin to embrace healing thoughts about yourself. What we talked about, where Three Principles community talks about innate well-being, where you can experience the wisdom that will bring you well-being again, that will soothe you, that will help you have understanding and really begin to forgiveness. So you don't need to, it doesn't, if we look at it with this logic, then for me, it doesn't make sense to have someone live in the feelings of those memories, because I know they can live beyond that and find their own wisdom to heal. They will know what to do next. Now, that again is not ignoring what happened. It's not downplaying what's happened. It's not repressing what happens, because we don't do that. We just see there's more to you than living in the memories of a painful, traumatic event or events. And you want to live in what's more about you, and live beyond the effects of that. So I hope that was helpful.
Yes, Mark. Wonderful. Now I understand it. Beautiful. All right, so now I will open for audience participation. So if anybody has any question, just raise your hand or just feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Karan,
Yes, Mark.
can I ask something?
Yes, please.
When we looked at 4 questions pretty deeply,
Mhm.
did it impact you?
It did. It did. I have different feelings about the questions that I asked.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that you just felt like you needed to get on to more questions then?
Uh, kind of, but there's really a big difference. Like when I started and now, it just made a good sense in my mind. I was trying to understand the logic of the principles, but it was just very simple.
Okay. I was asking that because I think you have a structure to your program. But all of us, as we um, may have a mentor or someone we're learning from, with one question that you asked, Karan, we could have just stayed in there and found even more. But you have a program you're running, so. But I just wanted to highlight that because when you're really looking to deepen your understanding of the principles, you don't want to go to the next, you don't want to keep going to the next question you have. But this is a different kind of program. So you're moving to different questions. And I love that you did get some impact. But I would just go back to when the program's over for everyone here, I would just go back to the feeling of what you got with the answer to each question. Did that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. It's the feeling that I can feel right now that has made the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, when we find it, I'm just going to share this because this really is program where we're looking at different questions about the principles. But it goes to, again, another nice guidance from Sid. When you find it, have a moment. Don't search, don't keep searching. So when you're with someone and you're learning from them in regards to the 3 principles, and you get a nice feeling, stay there. Don't go to the next question. If you're reading Sid and you get a nice feeling, stay there. Don't go to the next thing. It's the feeling you dropped in that's the container for you seeing more, not the next question. I really want to share that with everyone, how you want to slow down. And when you get a nice feeling, stay there. Live in that. See what it can bring you. Don't go to the next topic in the book because you got to read the book to the end, for example. So thank you for that opportunity to share that with everyone.
Thank you, Mark. So does anybody have any question to ask Mark? Yes, please.
My question is more of a comment. I like what you said
Oh.
about trauma and how you don't have anymore. And I think that that's really powerful. Because I get a lot of questions about trauma and abusive relationships and things like that, that I don't know, that really resonated with me. And I wanted to tell you that. I think I'd have to think on it more before I had any questions about it. But just that simple idea that you don't have to stay in those feelings and that you can get past it, to me, is amazing and hopeful. So thank you for that.
Well, that's beautiful. Yes. And just stay reflective. Just, in other words, don't think anymore. Just let it sit with you because you heard something and you want to just let it percolate. But even in abuse, it's not denying. People have the power of thought to see what's going on. So when people realize they're in an abusive relationship, they're using the power of thought to see what's going on. But we can help them either get the strength to find the wisdom to take care of themselves and find a way to live outside of that. But also, if it's something in the past, help them not live in the memories when they come to mind and really begin to access, excuse me, a wisdom that will guide them in their lives to manifest much more of themselves than just living in the experience of a trauma. So that's
It's
great,
hard,
Heather. Just sit in that.
it's hard to get beyond some of the symptoms though, like the exaggerated startle, thing that people do and they might not even be thinking about it, but you know, you get that second of fear. And sometimes that's hard to get over. I mean, you can always say, oh, it's just what I do, or it's just how I deal with startling noises or whatever it is. And I think the fact that you can decide that, like I said, I'm still kind of reflecting on it, but you can decide that that's not what you have to do anymore.
I think that's what you should stay with
Okay.
and not look at these other things.
Okay.
Because honestly, because as it starts to form in you, you'll see how to handle symptoms. Really, you will. So stay with what hit you. Don't start looking at other things about.
Okay. I'll try not to.
No, really, it's kind of like going to the next question. Just stay with what touched you. You really resonated with something. It's going to be powerful, and with that, you will see how to help with symptoms. But don't go
Okay.
to symptoms before you really have uh, uh, the sauce has really simmered.
Okay. Thank you.
And then Leslie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it was very similar to Heather, actually. I'm very, very new to the principles, so forgive me if I'm speaking from a place of absolute ignorance. But yeah, it was around trauma, and the fact that often the trigger, it's not a cognition, it could be a sound or a smell that
Mhm.
activates the nervous system, and a lot of the direction of therapy with people with trauma, it's absolutely not looking at cognition. It's actually working with the body, with a dysregulated nervous system. So it's things like introducing yoga, or some activity that gets people more aware of the sensations in their body, and then not be so reactive to them. Does that make sense? If you
Yeah.
familiarize yourself with sensations in the body. So it's just, yeah, I think it can be a bit of a misconception that PTSD, whatever the cause, is triggered by cognition, because it can be a smell or a sound. And maybe it's just that the body needs to be worked with to allow the triggers, or that hypersensitivity, that over arousal, to settle. Have I made any sense?
You sure have. And it's beautiful to take care of one's body in terms of traumatic experiences. Yoga, that's a beautiful way.
Mhm.
Again, um, I guess what I could offer to that is, again, being able to appreciate a human being's vulnerability to
Mhm.
triggers.
Mhm.
Just being uh, not appreciating that they happen, but just appreciating that you're vulnerable to smells or
Mhm.
feeling sensation or a sound or something triggering. And again, as you deepen your understanding of the nature of thought, it can help you with where the triggering takes you.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
see, it can
Yeah.
help you really settle down a bit, around where the trigger takes you. But again, in yoga is a beautiful practice,
Mhm.
and yeah, so that's what I would offer to that is that there are vulnerabilities that bring about what you might call a trigger.
Mhm.
You might call it that, from sensations,
Yeah.
and so you want to uh, how do you respect, I guess, or give yourself a lot of understanding that that happens. In other words, I mean, without judgment, seeing that you
Yeah.
just have the vulnerability to that. But also, as you deepen understanding of thought, you'll see how to handle what gets triggered.
Mhm.
Did that help?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I've been not fully understanding in terms of the three principles, because I guess, even if you just get a painful feeling, taking trauma out of it, you have an interaction with somebody and it triggers something painful. I'm still not sure how you deal with that in terms of the three principles, because often the sensation can happen precognition. If you're in a dialogue with somebody, often you feel the impact of something that's been said before you think, oh, I've suddenly feel I've been put down, or um, yeah. So how do you deal with it when it's the sensations come precognition?
Well, okay, so let's what we're going to look at, what I'm going to point to, um, is the formless, she would say, spiritual nature of the principles.
Mhm.
Mind, thought, and consciousness are a spiritual energy that you are. And they're given to you to create an experience of life every moment. When we look at what came first, we are looking at form. We are looking at us as a physical being. So a lot of cognitive psychologists say anxiety is first a feeling, then there's thinking.
Mhm.
But what Sid points us to is nothing can be experienced without thought. Thought comes before anything you experience. But he's pointing to the spiritual nature to create. Now,
Okay.
I don't, I don't, I don't know that, but I keep looking there. I get a feeling that you are part of something that creates in you an experience before um, any form.
Mhm.
And that takes reflection. That takes opening up to, oh my God, I don't understand that. I've got to look at ways I can deepen my understanding that nothing can come, nothing I can experience can happen before thought and consciousness. Nothing. And so my life has been a constant evolution of seeing that, getting a feeling for that, trying to help people step away from ideas about themselves as a person or a physical form and what comes first. But you are this energy that's giving you a moment of experience immediately from the fact that you can have thought and sensation.
Mhm.
There's no way to answer it in the world of thinking now, and the sensations. It's impossible to answer it. They've done many psychology studies about it, but what we're talking about is before this form, which is you, before the brain. So that may be another way to look at it, before the brain. You can't have sensations without the brain. The principles are the spiritual energy before the brain. They inform it. Now, my goodness, I'm telling you from the deepest feeling I can have about that, but there's still so much more to see.
Mhm.
And if you're in the three principles community, really, you've got to see no one understands thought. They have glimmers of it. They're sharing with you their insight into it, but it goes deeper than anybody has seen so far.
Okay.
So what you want to do, just kind of sit in what you've known so far, how you've kind of used the information you've learned about sensations and thinking. But I want you to try to bring yourself to something before you, before your brain. And I would look for that. I would look for that in Sid's books. I would just keep reading his books and watching the videos to stay open, to try to get a grasp of what really is thought. Now, you'll never figure that out, but you'll get a feeling of looking beyond what came first.
Mhm.
Um, um, Karan, I have a video of that. I did an event with Michael Neal, and somebody asked a question around that with anxiety. And I got really into the depth of this understanding when I was there in the event. And so we made it a separate video of the whole event. The whole event was videoed and recorded, but we recorded this separately. And I will be glad to share it, send you the link.
That would be wonderful. Yes, thank you.
I guess I'll share it with Karan, right? And then you could share it with your group.
Sure, I'll do that. Thank you, Mark, for that.
But that's how I would look, Leslie. I would look there. Don't try to answer what do the principles mean in terms of sensation. I get sensations before I get a cognition.
Yeah.
Try to get a feeling for the principles being formless, spiritual energy that is before the brain.
Right.
I mean, you just want to get a feeling for it. You know, it's a constant evolution of seeing that, and that will help you.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Leslie. So, Mark, I know we are running out of time. So, there's a question from Tracy, and she says, when the consciousness lowers into sadness, as it did to me recently, is it okay to sit in the sadness? As I felt the energy couldn't move until it served its time.
Yes, we're not talking about, this is beautiful. Thank you for that. We're not talking about a thing to do. We're not talking about what's okay or not. We're just talking that our levels of consciousness change for all of us. And we'll get into what we might call low mood thinking, sadness, whatever that is, you know. And we do what is common sense for us. We do what is right for us. It's not really to be, you know, this understanding of principles and levels of consciousness is not to be used for judgment. It's to be used for understanding. You see? So you'll find your own way. You do what feels right for you. Maybe you've seen that sitting there, you see something. So well, the main thing I want to get across with your question is, this is not a thing that the principles are not really guiding you to what to do. They're guiding you to an understanding of what's taking place. If you have an understanding of what's taking place, it frees you to handle your feelings and your thoughts and your levels any way you want to. You see, any way you want to. And if you've had some insight into the principles, that will come to you. You could be in your sadness, and your understanding will come back and guide you. So see, there's no shoulds or ought tos about it. It's an understanding that takes place. So if you see that it's just a drop in your level of consciousness, and you're in low mood thinking, you're in low mood thinking. You know, I mean, just to see, for you to ask the question that, you know, it's just a drop in your level of consciousness, you know, that you're already experiencing sadness in a different way, because you see it for being a level of consciousness. So I really want people to see this, that the principles, again, as I was talking with Leslie, they're spiritual. They have they don't care what you're doing with the experience they're creating. They're not there to tell you what to do. They're there to help you create an experience of your life. We talk about them so you understand where your experience of life is coming from. Once you know that, once you have a sense of that, you can choose to think any way you want to think. You see, you can think any way you want to think. You get freedom of thought. So the understanding will protect you. If you want to stay with your sadness, it'll protect you, because it will keep you from going way far out on it. You see what I mean? You won't go far out with it. But I hope that made sense. You have freedom to think any way you want to think, to experience your moment any way you want to experience it. The understanding will just guide you to see. You can look at issues of life with more health and understanding, with more wisdom. You can also look at your sadness with more wisdom. You don't lose the contact with it. So I hope that helped.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, she said yes. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Thank you. Oh, great, Tracy.
So, Mark, I want to thank you very much for giving us your time and sharing this beautiful understanding with us. And it's been a great webinar. Thank you very much, Mark.
Karan, can I just share something, a program I'm offering
Yes.
about this with?
Yes, please.
So first, I'm going to share with all of you that video from the principles in brain and anxiety. I'll share that with a link to Karan that came from my answering Leslie. But I also wanted to share with you a program I'm doing starting in September with Grace Kelly that speaks to awakening these deeper feelings. We're calling it self-esteem, but it's these deeper feelings. And it's, you know, there's more to life than thinking about yourself, which is like really beautiful. So I'll send that out to you too, that link to you too, Karan, so you could share it with the group.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll share the link with people.
It's been wonderful to be with all of you. Again, Karan, thank you for the invitation. I've seen you on Facebook, and I was just hoping I'd get an invitation, really, and it just came, and I just love being with all of you. Wonderful questions, and I could just feel the presence of people listening, and I really honor that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us. This was the Karan Detani show, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Karan.